and welcome to the ADHD-Friendly podcast. I'm Patty Blenderman. I am the host of this podcast, and my passion is finding ADHD-friendly ways to create more ease in my life. And I share those tips, tools, and resources here on this podcast, and I hope they do the same for yours. You might be wondering why I have this hat on. Today, our theme is birthday parties, how to plan ADHD-friendly birthday parties for the children in your life. Before I get to that, I am going to be sharing a celebration on resolutions and tasty cake pies. If you don't know what those are, I'll give you a little bit more info in just a minute. Then I'm going to share an ADHD-friendly tool and then dive in. It's a big topic, but I'm going to be covering experience I've had from throwing at-home birthday parties for 4 kids over the course of their birthdays, pretty much from the time they were 3 until they were 10, they had at-home parties. And I have lots of tips I'm going to share on how to do that in an ADHD-friendly way. And then at the end, of course, I'll highlight what's coming up in the next episode of ADHD-Friendly. So let's jump in with my celebration. I shared in episode 64, where I talked about 23 and 23 lists, how they can be a nice way to approach resolutions or your goals for the year. And in that podcast episode, I talked about how I used to make lists and put them in a file folder, and my husband and I would do this together each year. Then we would put the file folder back in the file cabinet and forget until the following year. Well, when I was planning for this podcast on birthday parties, I found the old file folder. Look, it actually says New Year's resolutions. So as always, if you are listening to this podcast, I invite you to check out, there's going to be a lot of visuals I share. So if you want to see them, check out my podcast on YouTube, the YouTube channel ADHD-Friendly, for all of the information that I'm sharing if you want to see the visual along with it. So when I found the file folder for my New Year's resolutions, what I found even more interesting was that apparently I would even put them in an envelope and seal them at the end when I wrote them. So this says 1993 resolutions. And I remember now, I'd forgotten this, but I used to put them in there and I would seal the envelope, and then I'd go back the end of the year and see. It just cracks me up. I can't believe I did this. To see what I followed through with. I literally expected my brain to remember my resolution throughout the year without any prompts, without any visual cues prompting me, and just to magically remember what I set out to do. And then I would see how many I completed. And obviously that didn't go well. So as Maya Angelou always said, when you know better, you do better. So I definitely have upped my game in terms of keeping what I am trying to do in 2023, what I call ISM, insight in mind, ISIM. All right, so I just wanted to follow up with that because it cracked me up when I found that. So on to my second celebration for this episode, and that is Wawa. If you are not from the East, and particularly in the South Jersey, Philadelphia area where Wawa is a thing, this may not be familiar to you. I'm holding up a Wawa bag, which is just like a little shopping bag, a little shopping tote. My husband went to New Jersey a couple of weeks ago on a business trip, and my favorite thing in the world is tasty cake lemon pies. This bad boy. Check it out. Oh my gosh, they're so good. They're so stinking good. One left. I literally used this as my restraint to keep it so I could show it off in this podcast episode. He came home with 4 of these lemon pies in this bag, and I have thoroughly looked forward to enjoyed them as a treat. I have 1 left. I have kept this on my desk, almost like a bouquet of flowers as a visual. It just makes me so happy every time I look at it. So I just wanted to celebrate how I'm using this as an incentive, as a reward for myself to pull me into doing things, because it's such a sparkly reward and I rarely get them. Not living in that area, and haven't lived in that area since I was in college. It's always a treat for me to get a tasty cake lemon pie. So I wanted to just share my celebration that I have them and I've been using them, and I still have 1 left. Okay. All right. On to my ADHD-friendly tool. This week, my ADHD-friendly tool is a postage scale. So this is my postage scale. I have had this since, I'm thinking 2005 is about when I purchased this. And they run, if you don't have one and this interests you as I share how I use it, they run about $20 to $40 for them. That was just me checking on Amazon to see how much they go for. Like I said, I've had mine since about 2005, and I used it initially. I had an eBay business. I've had a number of businesses over the course of my life, and my eBay business was one where I would sell things online and ship them. Well, I really struggle to ship things. That is one of my weaknesses. I can mail things that only require stamps, but I have a really hard time mailing things. So I bought this to try to make it easier so I could weigh packages that I was shipping out, and I would know how much postage needed on it, and I'd print postage at home. I always share the example. I'm holding up a mug that's a Snoopy mug. I just love Snoopy. And I got this from my dad for Father's Day one year. My dad lived in New Jersey. I was living in North Carolina. I put it in a box. I put his name, address, return address, taped it up, ready to go, drove around with it in my car for the better part of a year, and finally took it out and called my dad and told him that I got him this mug and I was going to think of him every time I drank from it because it was not going to get mailed. It's just something that I really have always struggled with. But what I have found is if I have the tools to make it easier for me to mail things, because it's kind of ironic that I struggle to mail things, but yet I started a business that was dependent upon mailing things. But I found the urgency really helped to support me. The postage scale let me weigh the package, and then I could go in and print the postage and just put it on and get it picked up at home. I don't do that anymore. What I use it for now is I always say, if I can fit it in a padded envelope or an envelope that can fit in the mailbox, I can get it to you. If I have to box it up and take it to the post office or postal center, I'm not going to do it. So I use this to weigh anything I can fit in an envelope, to put on the correct number of stamps, so that just still serves its needs, its purposes today. I weigh yarn when I'm knitting to see, how much I've used, so I can kind of calculate, well, I have enough, or am I going to need to buy more? I'll even weigh boxes I'm shipping. I won't really ship them from here, but I will weigh them to see how much it's going to cost, or if it's, if there's still room, a little bit of weight left over before it goes up to the next charge. If it's like on a window where I know, like, okay, from this weight to this weight, it's this much, I can put something else in there and I can clearly see that it's not going to tip it over into the next level. I can do that. I used to weigh luggage before I had my luggage scale. So it has a lot of things that it still does for me, but I just wanted to highlight it because if there's something in your life that creates a challenge for you, something that you really might struggle to get checked off, I invite you to explore what tools would make it easier for you to get that done. So you're leaning into supporting yourself instead of staying in that place of judging yourself. And why am I not just doing this? And why can't I seem to just, for me, like go to the post office and mail it? It's not a thing I do. So the postage scale does make it easier, but it really has become something that I use to mail envelopes, things that I can get into an envelope. All right, on to today's topic, birthday parties. I'm wearing a safari hat. I loved planning my children's birthday parties, and a hat to go with the theme was always something that kind of upped the game instead of like a traditional party hat. We certainly had those, but I loved it if there was a hat that I could tie in with the theme to change things up a little bit. So I just want to give a little backstory first into how I came about planning my kids' birthday parties from home. So a home birthday party. I know a lot of people, that may not be your choice. My sensitivity to loud noises and crowds really ruled out things like Chuck E. Cheese. I just always knew that just wasn't for me. And I had a couple of kids that were pretty sensitive to loud noises and lots of lights and flashing things and just, kind of a lot of stimuli going on. It could create some meltdowns a little bit more easily. So I was always looking to support them to have a really ADHD-friendly birthday party before I even knew that ADHD was in the mix. And I'm going to share that those tried and true tips that worked for me over the years. And I'm even going to share specific examples from some of the parties that I've thrown for my children. So let me start with tip number 1. We're going to dive right into this. And that is the length of the party. I found over the years, I used to plan 2-hour birthday parties, and that would leave some downtime for the kids. So over the years, I really found 90-minute parties were the sweet spot. I could get them through the door, fun party, out the door, 90 minutes. It took a little time and structure over the years. I had lots of practice with 4 kids and every one of them having a home birthday party when they were young. I had lots of practice for this, but I did find 90 minutes was really that, that time that everybody got to have fun and everybody pretty much was on their way before they got overwhelmed. There was really, I don't remember, I'm sure that maybe there was, but I really don't remember any meltdowns at any of the parties, barring the beginning, before I learned my tried and true tips. There were some meltdowns in the early parties, but not once I got my system down. Tip number 2, time of day. So I've shared before, I'm not really host savvy. I don't like to cook. I don't like to prepare meals. I like to bake. So the idea of having to feed kids like a meal and the time that would take and the structure and having to, figure out allergies and that kind of thing. If there were, any kiddos that had some food allergies, it just felt very overwhelming to me. So again, I was planning this to make it friendly for myself as well as for my kids. So I targeted a time of day when a meal would not be expected. So it was either from like 10 in the morning until 11:30 or 2 in the afternoon until 3:30. So again, I avoided, I kind of did mid-morning or mid-afternoon parties to avoid meal times. And then I did theme parties, which I'll talk more in detail about in a minute, but I always wanted to include my kid's picture in the birthday party invitation whenever possible. And I did this for almost all of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. And by that, I mean, so a lot of times I initially started doing this because all of my family lived away from my kids when they were small. And it was a way to, kind of remind them what they look like if they weren't going to see them for their birthday, and a way to create some fun and interest. So the first one I'm going to hold up is an invitation that I did for my daughter's 4th birthday party. And I just want to highlight, as I hold these pictures up, this was before digital cameras. My kids, I needed to take it with a camera that had film in it. And so what I used to do is take like a roll of 24 film and just take 24 pictures, and then I would have to take it and get it developed and hope one of those pictures came out that I could use for the invitation. So this is, my daughter wanted a Scooby-Doo party. And so I made the mystery machine out of that, like a big, I think it was like an 8x4 piece of drywall. And I just painted the mystery machine onto it and had my husband cut out the window. And I just had my daughter kind of stand out in the yard and stick her head through with Scooby-Doo. And I put all of the information on the side of the mystery machine. And I just took a picture and I printed them and mailed that out as the invitation. And that was what I did for almost all of their birthday parties every year. And it was also like a fun thing because it got me into the whole theme. Once I thought of the picture, it just kind of made it really sparkly and pulled me into the whole planning of the party. And I used to really enjoy kind of sketching out the party itself. So, or the invitation itself, I'd get like this visual idea and then I would try to draw it. So this is a planning sheet. I'm just going to hold up a little sketch that I did. For my daughter's 5th birthday party, I did how the Grinch stole her birthday. Her name, I put her name and like stole her 5th birthday. And so that little drawing where I literally drew the Grinch. I was planning on having my dog dressed up like Max and my daughter, and I have a little note here that I want her looking mad at the Grinch for stealing her party. And so the picture, and I know again there's a little glare on it, so it's hard to read, but again, it was another piece of drywall that I painted it and made the invitation on. I had her stand next to it looking mad. I dressed our dog in a green sweater and put a little party hat on him to make him look like Max, which is the Grinch's dog. And again, it was just a fun way to kick off the theme. So when people came to the party, they already knew what the theme was going to be because it told them in the invitation. Here's an example of a Charlie Brown birthday party where again, I did it. And you'll notice here, like I'm getting closer to my time. So here's 1 to 2:30 for the party. And just keeping it, kind of fun and light. And so I'm just highlighting some examples. I want to share a couple of boy examples, a couple of girl examples, and a lot of these can be gender neutral. And so like the Scooby-Doo party, the Grinch party, and the Charlie Brown party, all gender neutral. This was a Toy Story party for my son's birthday, where I made him look like Buzz Lightyear. And I unfortunately, I painted on the wall behind him there, and that did not come off. That was not fun. It worked for the party invitation, but it was up there until I repainted that wall. And then he had a hockey party one year, so I dressed him up in his hockey gear and just put it on a poster board on the wall. So these were really fun ways to kind of kick off the theme and get my brain excited about it. I had a son who did Darth Vader. We had a Star Wars party and had a Harry Potter party. And then I'm going to talk about this one more than some of the others. So I just wanted to share it. I did a dog party, and again, just pictures of my kids in the pictures always. This was the 10 to 11:30. This was my fourth kid, so I was really getting good at party invitations by this point and getting good at the time and how to structure it and how to make it work. All right. So clearly I like a theme. And remember, a theme really can serve as an anchor for the party. So the theme can connect everything clearly from the invitations that you send out all the way through the thank you cards at the end. It's a way to, really just ease into the structure of decorations. What games will you play? Maybe you get the cake with the theme, decorated around the theme. Goodie bags with the theme. All of it can have that tie-in when you pick a theme and then work from the theme. It just gives you that nice umbrella to kind of put everything underneath of and structure it with. So that was tip number 3, have a theme. Tip number 4, have helpers. It took me a long time to learn this. I really felt the need to do everything myself, and usually when the kids were really little, my husband would actually take the younger kids out for me so that they wouldn't be underfoot. And I wouldn't have to worry about them wanting to play if they were too little and it just wasn't a good fit. Or, my kids, they wanted their own party. They didn't want their siblings there when they were little. It was just wanting to be theirs. If that was the case, my husband would take them and keep them occupied. And so a lot of times it was just me running the party from time to time. And even if he was there, it was still helpful to have other hands to help. So I learned this the real hard way when my oldest daughter turned 7, and I had a Texas themed birthday party, like a cowgirl party. We had moved to Texas for a few years, and we'd only lived there for a couple of months when she was the first one to have a birthday when we moved there. And so I had more kids than I typically have. Typically, my rule is you can have as many kids as you're turning the age that your birthday is, +1. So if you're turning 5, you can have 6 kids. If you're turning 8, you can have 9 kids. She was turning 7, but I think she had 10 kids, and then plus her was 11. So that really broke my rule. But it was a new home, and we just invited all of the girls in her class to her party. Excuse me. And what I found was, because I had my 4th, like literally a couple of months before that, I was running around hosting this party with my baby and a front pack carrier. And I was doing, pin the tail. It was actually, we were doing pin the star on Texas. And I had like a United States map up, and I would spin them around and have them try to pin the star on the state of Texas. And I was doing that while I was carrying my baby. And of course, I have no pictures of that birthday party because there was nobody there to take pictures. And I learned from that experience, have helpers. Helpers can help you kind of, corral the kids, get them from activity to activity. They can take pictures or video while the party's going on. They can help keep up, when you're unwrapping presents, if they're keeping up with packaging and writing down names and who gave what gift. There's lots of things that people can help with, but ask for help so you can enjoy the party as much as possible. All right. And I just made a little note here to remind myself to share, you can have other family members be helpers. You can have other parents that are attending the party. If you know some of the parents, you can ask them to stay and help, or if they're friends, you can ask them in advance, would you mind hanging out and helping me with the party? Or even older siblings. And I have an example of that where some of my younger kids had my older kids help out when their parties came around. All right. Tip number 5, create structure. And by that, I'm talking about I'm going to break down the 90-minute birthday party. Now, I did do some of my birthday parties to be 2 hours. For example, I had the 90-minute party down, but one of my kids had a Harry Potter party, and we did different classes, like a potions class and sorting hat and activities that took more time. So I intentionally planned that to be 2 hours, but typically my parties were 90 minutes once I got my my theme down and my timing down. So I'm going to use my example from a 10 to 11:30 birthday party, just timing wise, to give you a sense of how I broke up the time. So I would do an arrival activity first from 10 to 10:15. You schedule a party to start at 10. There will be kids that arrive a few minutes early. There will be kids that arrive late. And I wanted to accommodate that without it disrupting the flow of the party. So I always had an arrival activity. So when the kids arrived, I would have a sheet of paper out where I asked them to sign in. I asked for the parent's phone number and if they had any allergies. I did not want any kids being dropped off, and I didn't have a parent contact number just in case somebody fell and got hurt or something. I wanted to be able to call the parents. I also always had name tags. I am really, really, really challenged with names. So it just would overwhelm me if I had these kids come in the house and I didn't know them well enough to know all of their names. So I would slap a name tag on all of them so I could easily remember who was who. And then some examples of arrival activities are, so I did a Mario party for one of my boys, and we did a craft with the number box. And then we had them guess how many gold coins were in a jar. And then I did a princess party where I had them make magic wands. So they each got like a dowel, and they could pick stars and glitter and ribbons that we would affix to their wands with them. And they would all make their magic wand, it was like a prop that they would go through the party with. I did a dino dig party where I had a big piece of butcher paper that served as my tablecloth. And then I had dinosaur stamps and stickers and crayons and markers and colored pencils all around the table that they could use to decorate their space that they were going to be sitting at when we had cake and ice cream later on. So they would decorate it with, whatever they wanted dinosaur theme. They make their own little picture that they wanted to have in front of them. For the dog party, I had them decorate a dog bowl, and they could put like I had little foam letters that they could spell their name out on it. So it was just like a regular dog bowl and little stickers and things they could use to decorate their bowl. And then for the pirate party, I had little tattoos. So I put tattoos on the kids, and then I had them decorate a treasure chest that they would fill with their treasures throughout the party. And that ended up being like their goodie bag that they would take home with them. Okay. Number 2, games. So now we did from 10 to 10:15, the arrival activity. Now everybody's here. So now I'm going to ask them, come on, guys, let's go, and we're going to play games. So I typically did 3 games in a party. And one of the games was often a piñata, and that would be the last one. If I was doing a piñata, the piñata was always last. But I wanted to just share some examples of games. So I'm going to go back to the Mario party I did. So one example is I was a big fan of pin the blank on the blank. So I pinned the mustache on Mario. So there I had a big picture of Mario, and the kids all had cut out mustaches with sticky on it. And they would, try to pin the mustache on Mario and see who can get the closest. We played Mario Bingo. That was a lot of fun. And we did an egg piñata. So I actually made that one that year. I made one with paper mache around a balloon. I made it to look like the big green and white egg. And I made it with pull strings. What I found over the years is store-bought piñatas are really, really hard to break into. And it created a lot of stress because they're hitting it with a stick. And I was always afraid somebody was going to get hit. And a number of times my husband had to go in and actually break the piñata because it wasn't able to be broken by the sticks. So even when I started buying them store-bought, when I learned how much more ADHD and just friendly in general, a pull string was to just kind of like, it pulls like a drop door, like a trap door kind of opening out of the bottom of the piñata, and everything just falls out. I would cut the bottom of a store-bought piñata and put ribbons across it, and then I would tape it back up so that the kids could pull their ribbons and it would just pull that door right off of it so it would open up. But I would, that example, I made the piñata. And then for the dog party, I did an adoption center, and I've got some pictures I'm going to hold up here. So it was basically like adopt a dog party where they would come and I had a little box filled with like shredded newspaper, and I had a bunch of little dog stuffed animals. Every one of them was different. And here you'll see my oldest was helping the kids come around the adoption center. So they went to the box and they picked out their dog, and then they had to fill out the adoption certificate. And the adoption certificate had things like their fur color, their eye color, what they were naming their puppy. And then they would sign it, that they were agreeing that they were adopting this puppy. So they would then take that puppy. And here's a picture of one of the participants just signing the adoption certificate. Okay. And then they would go to different stations. So we had, and I covered a couple, if there's other kids in the picture, I covered, if their faces are showing, I covered their faces just to protect their privacy. This is, lots and lots of years ago, but I don't want to, kind of share other people's kids' pictures without their permission. So this was a picture of the dog grooming station where I just set up little plastic tubs, and I had little, kind of dog, little faux dog shampoo and a little play blow dryer, and they would give them pretend baths and, groom them and fix their hair. And then they had a little vet station where you took them, and this is my own daughter, so I can show her, where they took them and they give them a little checkup to make sure that they were okay. And so I had a little doctor kit there for them to check out their little dogs and make sure that they were doing all right. And then at the, I had a collar decorating center, and I don't think I have a picture of that, where they made collars for their dogs. And it was just pipe cleaners and beads. And there was letter ones, so they could make, put the letters to spell out their dog's name on the collar. And then they would just twist the pipe cleaner around the dog's neck, so it would have a cute little collar. And then when they were finished with the games and they were eating cake and ice cream, I'm just going to show, I made little placemats out of newspaper that I laminated, and they ate out of the dog bowls that they decorated as their arrival activity. And they got such a kick out of that. We did clean them after they finished decorating them. My helper took them and carefully washed them out so that they were clean. And then they had their cake and ice cream in the little dog bowl. Okay. And one other thing that I didn't share in this specific, these two examples of the games, but I did this in a lot of parties, and that was a version of musical chairs. So my example here is with the Grinch party, we did Grinch footprints that I cut out, big green footprints. And what I found with musical chairs is, or any version where there's a winner, quote unquote, it tends to always result in a meltdown. Somebody's left out, there's a winner, there's a loser, and it tends to kind of set you up for some hard feelings. And I always want to avoid that. A birthday party for me is all about having fun and including everyone and being really sensitive to just making sure everybody is hopefully having a really good time for the 90 minutes that they're there. So instead of musical chairs version where people are out of the game when the music stops, if there isn't a chair, or in this case, if there isn't a footprint, I would have footprints on the floor, enough except one less. So if there's 7 kids, there's 6 footprints. And when the music stopped, I would take a footprint away, and then they would have to figure out how to fit on the remaining footprints. And the result was, and I always had the last one was always a little bit bigger. I wanted them all to fit on the last footprint, and that way they'd all win if they could fit. So the number of footprints would go down, and they would have to figure out how to position themselves after each song to fit. So now there's like 5 kids fitting on 2 footprints, and then we take the last one away and there's just 1 remaining, and then there's 5 kids fitting on 1 footprint. So again, just a fun way to kind of modify it and keep it interesting, so that I was always looking for, I don't want downtime. I don't want kids sitting and being bored. I want them all engaged and having fun the entire time. So including everybody as much as possible really seemed to be a game changer in terms of making sure we were really minimizing the chances for meltdowns. All right, and that leads us to the time that, in my experience, really had a lot of meltdowns if you were going to have them, and that's opening the presents. Now, what I purposely wanted my kids to open their presents. I always liked going to birthday parties where the kids get to see the birthday child opening their gift. I always was a little sad for the kid and the gift givers if they didn't get to open it at the party, if it was just kind of, well, we'll take them home and we'll open them later. So I loved the chance to see the reactions. It gave my kids a chance to learn how to be gracious, even if it was a gift they got two of, or they already have, or they just don't like it. They had to learn how to accept gifts and be polite, even if it wasn't their favorite thing. But I didn't want meltdowns to come because kids got bored or they wanted to play with it when, there was still gift giving going on. So I came up with a pass the gift game. And it was just like a present opening activity. And so I'm just going to give a little additional tip here. I always had scissors. I always had a plastic trash bag and a paper and like a pad of paper and a pen. So I had everything we needed to open the gifts if they needed help, because sometimes they were really hard to open. So I would just have a pair of scissors to kind of help them out. And then I would have a trash bag to put all the wrapping in and trash that was going to be thrown away. And then I had a paper and pen to write down what the gift was and who it was from, so we'd remember. So the present open activity was also set to the theme. So for example, for one of my daughters had a princess party, and we played Pass the Poisonous Apple. So kind of borrowing from Snow White theme. And we played Disney princess music, and we would start the music and the kids would all pass the apple. And then when the music stopped, whoever was holding the apple got to go get their gift and give it to my daughter. And they were able to sit next to them while they opened the present. I'd get a picture of them after my daughter opened the present. So I'd have that picture of them together, which also helped me remember who gave them what, in case for some reason we couldn't find. I've had the paper get unfortunately thrown away during the party before. And so the kids, after they give it out, they sit on the outside of the circle and it goes around and around and around. Now, sometimes, I had some parties like with the princess party where I would give the kids, once they got out of the circle, they gave them their gift. And when they're sitting outside the circle, they got like a tiny little bottle of bubbles, and they would get to blow bubbles around the kids while they were giving out the rest of the, when the music went on and they passed the poison apple when they went on. So you just repeat until they go through. It really cut down on what I learned was the kids are so anxious to give their present, and they crowd in, and it just created this little, kind of tense time that I was like, okay, we got to figure out a better way to do that next time, because it really didn't work. And I just noticed it's just a tendency. They want to be really close. They want to see it. And sitting in the circle really kind of held the structure for them. And they didn't have to worry about not being able to see the present being open, because they were sitting in a circle around the birthday kid, and they knew they would get their turn when they were holding the apple. And then my example for the Star Wars party was we would pass the lightsaber around the circle, and I played Star Wars music and the John Williams soundtrack from Star Wars on CD. It was great. And then for the dog party, we passed a plastic bone around, and we played it to the song, oh where is my little dog gone? So again, this is a great thing just to think about, having your helpers write down who gave the gift, help her to turn on and off the music, collect the trash and the wrappings, and take the picture of the gift giver so that you have that. That serves as a great thank you note. And I'll talk about that in a little minute, in just a minute. All right. And then fourth, cake and ice cream. Did I say the time for gifts? Okay, sorry. So for the present opening activity, that I did not say because it wasn't written down. So, oh no, I did. The games are I have from 10:15 to 10:50, so about 35 minutes. And then from 10:50 to 11:10 is cake and ice cream. So about 20 minutes. And I did this immediately after the presents were open to get them kind of to transition. They're all looking forward to cake and ice cream. What I found in the past is that the kids want to open the presents, they want to play with them. And sometimes whether it was, I want to make sure that it doesn't get broken or lost. I didn't want them doing that, or it could be that they got duplicates and I need to return one of them. So I really just wanted to make sure everything was going to be okay after the party and get them to easily transition to the next thing. And cake and ice cream always did that. So over to the table for cake and ice cream. And so I would serve that, and kids, it doesn't take a long time, but again, if I could tie the theme to it around, I remember with Harry Potter, we did different potions, quote unquote, for drinks, and they could pick, if they wanted like a root beer float, and it would, get all foamy and just different fun things to tie to the theme to keep it interesting. And then for the last 15 minutes or so, I would do an ending activity. And that would be having the kids, typically, I would read them a story tied to the theme of the party, and I would have goodie bags. So my helpers would kind of prepare everything to make sure that they were ready to go with everything that they were going to need when their parents came to pick them up, if their parents weren't there, if they didn't stay. And so, for example, with the dog party, I read like Harry the Dirty Dog. Another thing I could have read would be like Clifford the Big Red Dog. And while I read the book, the helpers cleaned out in the dog party example, the dog bowls, and dried them and got everything ready to go so that when their parents showed up, they could give the bowl and the newspaper placemat, and if we did a piñata, they'd have like a little, loot bag, and make sure that, for the dog case, they had their little dog and their gift certificate so that they left with everything that they were taking home from the party. And I did it for my dinosaur dig party. I read Sammy and the Dinosaur, which was a great book. And I had my helpers make sure that when the parents came, I was reading the story to the rest of them. And that way it gave the kids something to focus on while, one by one, the kids were going home, and they would get their little, like for that book, for that party, they had like a little bucket filled with little dinosaurs they got to take with them. And even as a, kind of a wrap up activity, sometimes if there were still kids there, we would watch like Harry Potter. We put on the beginning of a Harry Potter movie, or, a little like Scooby-Doo cartoon if we were a Scooby-Doo party, that kind of thing. So just like a little ending activity tied with the goodie bags so that they're transitioning smoothly, just the way they arrived. And then last but not least, the party's over, thank you notes. So if you took pictures of the kids when they were with the birthday child with the present they gave them, it's literally the easiest thing to print that out and send that as the thank you card. Just have the kid write a little short note and send it on to the child, and you're done. So it ties the theme together, it really bookends the theme from the invitation all the way to the thank you notes, and you've got your 90-minute birthday party, ADHD friendly style. This was the hat I had for the dino dig party, little explorers. All right, so to recap, I shared a celebration at the top of the episode that when you know better, you do better, like with my 23 and 23 list, keeping them insight in mind, unlike my resolutions that I was putting in a sealed envelope until the end of the year to see if I kept up with them. And then I shared my Tasty Cake Lemon Pie win in my Wawa bag that is really serving as an incentive for me to do some of the things that I need a reward built in to get going. And then I shared my postage scale as my ADHD friendly tool for this episode and how it creates more ease for me to mail things. And then I went over the topic for today, my ADHD friendly birthday parties, and how to really use the theme, use structure, use how to think about the timing of the party, and how to break it down into a manageable and hopefully fun birthday party that you and your child will always remember. And next episode, what's coming up? I'm going to be talking about pocket charts and how I use them for planning and to keep things, again, in sight and in mind. Until next time, tally ho.